3 separate occasions. I made a lot of money. I lost all of it.
I actually think you hit a wall in most things in life. 3 knee surgeries in the space of like 18 months, 20 months. Quit. Don't do high intensity. On my bucket list was I wanted to run a marathon. So I was like, cool, I'm going to do it anyway. I did a training run in 35 degree heat.
That's insane. In 35 degrees heat.
If I start at a certain place, I said I'm going to finish. I just dig deep.
Success is on the other side of hard.
Of course it is. Life comes at you fast. Question 2 is, do you have a pension?
I don't actually.
I'll be honest, a lot of it was down to things like ego. The ego gets in the way and it just stops them from doing anything.
We're cooked, aren't we?
We're honestly, bro, we are cooked because we don't do anything about it. Pakistanis, that number went up to 16%.
You have to tie your camel. Hey, assalamu alaikum.
Hey, walaikum salam, Khalid.
How are you, Waleed?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. Lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Muslim Founders Network podcast.
Thank you.
How's your journey today?
Yeah, journey was fine. Pretty straightforward. Come from the other side of the river, but it's all good.
Yeah. Well, look, we've got a lot to cover today, I know, and not a great amount of time. So we're going to go straight into it, right?
Cool.
Tell me a little bit about yourself first, please. What do you do?
Oh, gosh. Which question? I mean, I'm a South Asian man in my 40s, early 40s, I could add, just on the right side of the 40s. I'm a dad to 3 kids. Alhamdulillah, I've got 3 beautiful kids. I work in finance. I'm quite active. I'm very hands-on as a dad and as a husband, cook, clean, do whatever. And I guess ultimately, I'm just on a journey. I'm just trying to be the best version of myself.
Excellent. Right. So I understand that you're preparing for a half marathon?
I am. I'm training for a half marathon in 2 weeks, inshallah.
Right. Okay. But you've also had some issues with your knees as well, right? So what I want to ask you is, how are you managing to train and do 10Ks and a half marathon with the fact that you've also had some minor knee surgeries as well?
Yeah,
Talk
okay.
about your knee surgeries.
Yeah, good. Okay, yeah, happy to talk with you. So, I'll give you the whole journey just so it gives you an idea, right? So 2020, November 2020, actually it was before then, it was a few months before then. So I was always quite active. I loved it. I love exercising. I've always been quite into training. I used to do something called F45, right? Which was basically high intensity training. It was like 45-minute sessions. Bearing in mind I was probably in my mid to late 30s when I was doing it. So there's a lot of this stuff's like really explosive, lots of jumping and stuff like that. And then I started getting some pain in my left knee. And I was like, okay, maybe just go away. I've just overdid it. It was still there and it went on for a number of weeks. So I was like, okay, I better get this checked out. So I went and had private healthcare through work. So went and got the referral from the GP, saw a consultant. Consultant was like, okay, could be this, could be that. Go and have an MRI. I had the MRI scan and it came back and basically I had something called a meniscus tear. Okay, I just give people an understanding. And a meniscus tear, so your meniscus is like your shock absorbers in your knee, right? You've got one on each side. So you've got the medial side and the lateral side. And I had a tear in the medial side, so the inner side, and that the consultant said that explains what it is, because when you've got a meniscus tear, you can't bend, you can't flex. There's a lot of pain if you go into a deep squat. So I said, what's the options? He goes, well, look, we can leave it and it might get better, or we just cut it out. And I was like, okay, some surgery. And obviously, bearing in mind, I never had any major surgery previously. So I was like, okay, fine.
That must have felt quite daunting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Because obviously, whenever you have any kind of surgery, they tell you all the risks. They tell you the risks of it infection. They tell you risks it go wrong. Like the other major risk, which most people just don't think about too much, is they tell you like when you have anesthesia, there's a risk you may not wake up.
There is,
because the anaesthetist, that people don't realize, has quite a hard job.
Yeah.
They've got to give you enough anesthetic to keep you out, but they've got to give you enough oxygen to keep you alive as well at the same time.
It's like a balance, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah. So there's that part that's scary. So at the time I was like, oh, okay, speak to Asian parents and like, oh, you don't need surgery, or stop exercising. I was like, that's not the answer now, right? Yeah. Anyway, long story short, I had the first surgery, and it was like, It wasn't as bad. To be fair, they do it through keyhole. So I think my consultant who explained to me goes, we put a camera in one side, we put the device in one side. You're knocked out. It's about half an hour, 40-minute surgery. Don't ever go onto YouTube and Google it, because
Don't watch
apparently
it.
they take your knee and twist it all sorts of
No,
places to
no.
do it just to get this bit of cartilage out. So anyway, I had the first surgery done. They get you to walk straight away as well, which is quite weird. But it's like, yeah, we want you to walk straight away to get your body to tolerate it. And I was out of hospital literally the same day, and then the recovery is the hardest part, right? So the recovery is like, bearing in mind, like my knee was massively swollen, all this water and inflammation. You get something called muscular dystrophy as well, which basically the muscles start to shrink
Yeah,
the
because you're
body's
not using them.
you're not using it, and obviously the body's protecting it as well, right? So you got all of that. So once all the swelling and everything's calmed down, then I had the stitches taken out 2 weeks later. That's the hard part. Then the hard work starts. It's all the rehab. And I remember I was really lucky. I was really blessed. And I got a really fantastic physio who was recommended by my consultant. He's only become a good friend of mine now. And I feel really privileged because my physio actually looks after a lot of sports people as well. So he looks after like boxers, footballers and so on. So anyway, me and him, he took me on board. He was like, have this, do this program. We need to basically build up your legs as much as possible because you've got a little bit less cartilage. So he goes, your muscles have to protect it. Anyway, got through the program, was doing well. I went back to my F45 training, got on with that, and then
But F45 is quite intense, isn't it? 'Cause
It
I've
is.
seen videos of it. It's very high impact. And
100%, yeah. It is quite intense. And actually, the lesson I learned from it is maybe one, I was probably, I'm not going to say too old because I don't think you're ever too old, but I should have listened to my body a little bit more. I should have done more in the recovery. But anyway, I went back, and then 6 months later, my right knee went. So I had the same thing happen on the right knee, medial meniscus.
what are the chances of that?
Well, it's
insane.
quite high actually.
Is it?
Yeah, so the chances are quite high because you've got to look at it. The body is then protecting imbalances, right? So if you've got some cartilage removed here,
Your other leg is
the other one's
compensating.
going to
Yeah, there's
compensate. So
compensation
that's
there.
taking more load. So I went back and had that one done 6 months later. Again, got back at the program, and again, rehab was sorting that out. Funny enough, while I was having the rehab done for my right knee, because the physio get you to balance on the other leg, my left knee was giving me more issues again. So again, went back to the consultant, had some scans, and he goes, "Look, I don't want to be horrible, but there's another tear. You've got
Insane.
another tear in it." So he goes, "Look,
So left knee, then right knee. And now the left knee again.
yeah, left knee, right knee, then left knee again." So again, I gave it a while and then had it scanned again. He goes, "No, it's still there. It's not healing itself." And that was actually giving me some more problems. So the second time round, it was locking, which gave me an issue. So again, went in and had the surgery. So bear in mind, what was this like? 3 knee surgeries in the space of like 18 months, 20 months.
That's a
Again,
lot.
and the harsh lesson I was given, as I said, over time you become friends with you consult people that treat you. The consultant said to me, "Quit. Don't do high
Really?
intensity." Yeah, he was a harsh lesson, but he's like, "Don't do high intensity now. Like, if you keep doing that, you're just gonna wear your knees. You're gonna be having like early stage osteoarthritis." So anyway, long story short, that was 2020, end of 2021, 22. Left it, gave up the high intensity, started doing other stuff. I was doing like boxing. I got into boxing because that's more upper body. I was mainly focusing on strength training, and the hardest.
But with box, there's a lot of twisting, isn't there? There's a lot of
Yeah.
like sideways and
There's a lot of
movement, isn't
pivoting.
there?
There's a lot of
pivoting,
twisting.
yeah.
There's a lot of pivoting, a lot of twisting. But again, with boxing, it's more upper body, so I
Yeah.
wasn't using my legs as much as like all the jumping, the burpees, and that sort of stuff. So then I went to boxing again. That was fine. But then fast forward to beginning of this year. So you asked me about my half marathon journey. Like as I said, a bit reflecting on like what did I want to do in life, the things I've always wanted to do.
So this was on your bucket list, right?
This was on my bucket list, and actually, I'll be honest, on my bucket list was I wanted to run a marathon. Okay,
Yeah.
so my bucket list was in my 20s. I think I've got it written down somewhere. So I always say this to people: whenever you want to do things, write it down.
Yeah, write your
because-
goals down.
Exactly, because a goal without being written down is just a dream, right? When you write it down, something powerful happens. So anyway, it was on my bucket list. I had it written down. I was like, wanted to do a marathon. And then me and a friend got talking at the beginning of this year, And ironically, he did the half marathon that I'm doing. He did it last year. It's called the Big Half. And I was like, how did you do it? He goes, oh, it was all right. You know, he just turned 40 and it's like, it was hard. I've also got some meniscus issues. He's not had proper surgery. Because it was fine. It was hard, but I managed to get through it. And obviously, I needed a bit of time to recover. But I was like, did you fall? Did you have any major relapses? He goes, no. It was just a bit of soreness. So I think that gave me the motivation, plus for the bucket list. I was like, right, I'm going to do it. So I literally went home that evening. I signed up to the Big Half Marathon, which, if most people don't know, a full marathon's 26.2 miles. A half marathon is
13 miles.
Yeah, 13.1. It's like 21 kilometers or whatever like that.
That's still quite a distance,
It's a lot.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot. And I've never used to running. So then I listened to my body, but also I went and saw like my specialist before I signed up to it. So I actually went back and saw my physio, who's treated me for years. He goes, no, you're good, bro. He's like, you could do it. Just make sure you work a lot of the quad strength, do that. Otherwise, I think you're good. I went back and saw my consultant as well that did all my knee surgeries. Again, he sent me for a scan. He goes, there's no major changes. He goes, do bear in mind, because you've had about 30% of your meniscus cartilage taken from that B. There is going to be some bone on bone, so you will get some points, but it's rubbing. And he goes, I don't need to tell you any different. You know you're going to get knee replacements in your old age anyway, because you've already had the cartilage removal, which again is a kind of a bit of a given for most brown people anyway, right? We would like damn to get arthritis. So I was like, cool, I'm going to do it anyway. If it's going to happen, let's do it. So I've just been training for it. And actually, I started training at the beginning of the year, like really slowly, just started getting on the treadmill, was doing like 5Ks, managed that.
And you're listening to your body, aren't you?
I was listening to my body.
You're listening to your body. You're seeing how the knees are reacting.
Exactly.
Is that what's a recovery? What's the pain threshold?
Yeah.
If the session is okay, then you know you're good to do another one.
Exactly. I was listening to my body. I was resting. I was recovering. I was testing it. I was always, and I tried loads of different things. This is the advice I give to everyone. It's like, if you're trying something new for the first time, don't try to make wholesale changes. Make like really small changes. So even at the beginning of the year, because I knew I was going to do this. It was January. The half marathons in September. That's 9 months. People are like, oh, you're training quite for a long period. Yeah. But for me, it was making all these small adjustments, bearing in mind the injuries. So then I got 2 different pairs of running shoes. I ordered like 2 different pairs. I tried them both out. I was doing like 1 day training with
you're testing
the softer one. I was doing 1 day training with the harder ones, realized which ones worked. Little things like I was doing was like I was wearing like knee supports or compression sleeves. Tried that. Little things.
Just seeing like what's helping and what's hindering.
100%. Yeah. Small tweaks. There was times where I was I was running and not having food, and then there was times I was eating some food and then going an hour later, seeing how so it's all those little things. And then eventually I kind of thought, okay, I've got Ramadan came, so that meant my training got a little bit. I didn't completely stop, but I wasn't been able to run long distance because you're training, you're fasted, you do need to take on water. So March was a little bit like I was running, but I wasn't doing like 5-6Ks training. I was just doing 2 or 3, and then thought, okay, if I'm getting thirsty or dehydrated, I'm just going to stop and take it easy. So anyway, March came, got it out of the way, and then beginning of April, started training again. I was like, right, I'm going to test myself. So I signed up to do a 10K in April. So it's only like on 3 weeks training post Ramadan. I did this 10K, and actually, surprisingly, I was okay. Like I did the first one. It was lots of running up hills. I was like, am I going to be able to finish it? Because the most I'd run up to that point was like 6-7K.
That's a big jump.
It was a big jump. It was hard, as strange. But the really strange thing about that race is that it was 2 laps of a park, right? The same circuit, but it was 2 laps of it. And I worked out that the first lap I did, which was approximately 5K, I worked out where I went right and where I went wrong in the strategy. Yeah. So I ran up one of the hills initially, and that took out a lot of energy.
Yeah, so you figured out which was the tough areas
exactly.
and which were the slightly easier areas.
Exactly.
So then you could strategize for the second.
Exactly. Route. And again, this is the whole point about like taking on more of the changes. So the first half, I did the race, and then worked out which parts to run faster, which ones to run slow. And the second half was a lot quicker. I think my second lap was like 4 minutes quicker than my first lap.
That's amazing.
So and it takes, again, not gonna lie, a lot of these things your body can physically cope, but a lot of it is mental resilience. So I remember getting to like the 8-9K, It was like the last kilometer. Somehow I just dug in and got that like extra 10%, 20%. And the last kilometer, I just started running. Like I took running faster. I got a lot of my, cut down my lap time by like a minute. Saw the finishing line right.
Because you feel like I've only got 1 kilometer to go.
Yeah.
You're feeling strong. So you're like, okay, let me dig in and let's just do this.
Yeah.
So within that 10K, did you hit they talk about in the marathon, you hit the wall, right? Is there such a thing in a 10K? Did you feel any point where you're like, you know what, this is really grueling. This is.
Yeah.
Do you hit like a wall?
So
in a
again,
10K as well?
the people often say you hit a wall in a marathon or a half marathon, right? Which is often the case. I actually think you hit a wall in most things in life, because there's always like physically we always gear ourselves up to do certain things, but there's a point where it gets hard, and then you've got this battle in your brain. It's like, do I carry on? Do I push it? Do I listen to myself? One side is saying carry on, the other side's going like slow down, whatever. I don't think I hit a wall particularly, but I remember the first. It was literally like the first second K of this 10K I did, that I started getting really bad cramp in my calves.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh man, I didn't do a proper stretch. I should have done a proper stretch.
That's always a bad sign.
It's always a bad sign, isn't it? And actually I worked out, I was like, oh, is it just the body adjusting? And then did I run too fast up the hill to start off with? And then at one point I was like, I'm just going to pull over and just like walk it. And then again, I talk about digging in and mental resilience. I just dug in and got through it. And actually by K3, 4, it's like, okay, the cramps are still there.
They loosened up a little bit.
It loosened up, and then I got used to it. And actually, surprising, I just carried on going all the way round. So that was April. I got a medal. It was quite a nice feeling. I'll be honest, at completing a race.
It's a huge achievement. It's a huge achievement.
Massive achievement.
I've never done a 10K.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd encourage you to do it, bro. Honestly, I'd encourage just the feeling of finishing a line, getting a medal, getting that euphoric. People talk about something called the runner's high, which I've never experienced because I've never been a runner.
There is such a thing.
But getting this medal at the end, you get a nice cold bottle of water, you get a few snacks. They'll give you like a protein bar, and I still remember I got like a muscle gel from rub on your leg. There's all these things, and then you see other people, their chairs. So I was like, this is a nice buzz. My family were there at the time, so my kids were like super excited when I was across the finish. That was April, and then I again go back to the thing about writing down goals. So I always said to myself, when I was doing this half marathon, I wrote it down on a piece of paper and said, checkpoint 1, April, do 10K. Checkpoint 2, end of June, do another 10K. And then it was like, every kind of 2.5, 3 months, then building up to the half marathon. So actually, I didn't do a 10K at the end of June because work just got busy. A lot of other things sort of came in the way. I sort of missed the deadline, and then I had a summer holiday, and I was like, well, I've not really been training consistently. But then summer holidays came, and I just stepped up my training a bit more. And then I did another 10K at the beginning of August.
Right.
So I did another one.
Not long ago.
Yeah, exactly.
About 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. And I did another 10K. And actually, bearing in mind I did a training, I was running a lot more outdoors at that point, getting the body used to it. And again, I did 6 minutes better than my first 10K. So
That's
I was like, okay,
different.
Cumulatively, I'm shaving off like 45 seconds off each kilometer.
So 6 minutes that's a massive difference.
Yeah, compared to my first one. So
but you must have been training during the heat waves, right? Because we've had 5 heat waves.
Yeah.
So that must have been quite grueling to train. You're running out in what, 29, 30 degrees when you're training.
A couple of weeks ago, I ran out and I was doing a training run. Bearing in mind the training runs building up to the half marathon, I did a training run in 35-degree heat.
That's insane.
Which wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
Not 10K. That must have been 5.
I did 9. No, I did 9 actually. My coach, I'm going to tell you about the running coach a second.
That's insane. In 35 degrees heat.
35-degree heat. So my coach said to me, do 8 if you can push yourself, keep going. But again, psychologically, I'm one of these people, like if I start at a certain place, I say I'm going to finish, I just dig deep. So you
have this resilience, don't you? I think you've built it over many years, because I remember you telling me many years ago, and we can talk about this briefly, that you have an ice bath, right?
I do.
Yeah. As an Asian Pakistani, I'm scared of anything cold. Like even if, in my local gym, if the swimming pool is too cold, I'd be like, no, I don't want to swim today. It's too cold.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of an ice bath?
Do you know, it's funny.
What does it do for you? Yeah. Science or pseudoscience or whatever. Because I know you're a huge fan of
Do you
the
know,
ice bath.
again, do you know, it's really funny because yeah, like majority of brown people I speak to, like Asians, South Asians, I'll never go anywhere
Yeah,
near
I'm
that ice bath.
terrified of
And
them.
even the water's tiny bit cold. It's like I can't go in the shower.
Yes, I do.
Do you know that honestly, the cold plunge for me does two things, right? I always say this. It does two things. One, the recovery element is fantastic, right? And there is, again, lots of science, lots of studies into this, that if you do a cold plunge after doing quite a hard workout, the body, there's something to do with, they say, the amount of oxygenated blood when you go from cold straight away to then going into warm shower afterwards. The amount of oxygenated blood goes into the muscles, just goes in really quickly, so it
Right.
helps with the recovery. So there's lots of
So
science
there's
behind it.
physiological
Yeah,
benefits.
there's physiological benefits of it, but actually, do you know, the other side of it is the mental strength, right?
Yeah.
And this is the point I always try to teach and coach people about. A lot of things in life can be overcome by mental strength, which again
Mental
we could talk about,
resilience, yeah.
we'll talk about in more detail. But there are times that I've done, bearing in mind I've had my cold plunge for 4 years now. I
Yeah.
think I've had it for 4 years. There are times that even in the winter, so I've I must have done it easily over a couple of hundred times
Yeah,
now in those 4 years.
yeah.
There are times in the winter where I'll look out the window, and bearing in mind this is peak winter, right? So this is like
It's frozen over.
January. It's minus, it's cold over now. It's like -6. I'd look out and the cold plunge is freezing. There's about thick ice about that much, and I'm like, I'm gonna bottle it. I don't want to do it today. I'm gonna bottle it. I'm gonna bottle it. And then I have this mental fight in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And I'm like, no. You said I'm gonna. Yeah, I said I'm gonna do it, so I'm gonna do it. So I go in there, and literally within 5 seconds, go in there, take my dressing gown, bathrobe, towel gown off, break the ice, and just jump straight in. Jump straight in. It's a shock. Don't get me wrong.
insane.
It's a shock to the system. I think because I've got used to doing it over time. But the part I say, it's like, it's about being able to challenge yourself to do hard things, and I keep saying, alhamdulillah, as mentally resilient I am. I'm always, I said to you at the beginning, I'm on a quest to try and be the best version of myself. So
Yeah.
I think we have to, as humans, and especially as Asians, as Pakistanis, I think we need to challenge ourselves to be better every day. So do something hard, like even if it's a small thing, do something that takes you slightly outside your comfort zone. And
So somebody said success is on the other side of hard.
of course it is.
Everything you ever wanted
Yeah.
is on the other side of hard, right?
Of course it is. Yeah, and I can say that so many things. Talk to you about another time about when I did a skydive, right? And again, that was a completely different thing. And again, I remember watching. When I did it, it was great. But then I remember watching a YouTube clip of Will Smith, and he said the same thing. He said the best things in life are just on the other side of the most scariest things. And it's an amazing. Again, same thing. The cold plunges. I've done it probably a couple of hundred times.
Amazing.
But I cannot describe the feeling I still get, that rush of going into the cold water, coming out, and then going in a nice warm shower, which is, by the way, is an amazing feeling, right? You feel so nice and relaxed. But just the feeling you've done something hard and you've accomplished it, and especially if you've done it first thing in the morning, you're like, I'm ready for the day.
Okay, I've actually got a lot more to speak to you about sport, right?
Yeah.
But I want to move you on to talk about financial planning now.
Sure.
Maybe I can bring you back again and talk about resilience, mental resilience, because I know you're very passionate about that. So financial planning is part of what you do as well as part of your job.
Yeah.
Why is financial planning important? What kind of population do you find that leave it a little bit late, or people who are a little bit lax about it? When should one start worrying about financial planning? Is financial planning only for people who are in their 40s and 50s, or do people need to start a little bit earlier? What's the plan, really?
Oh gosh, Khaled, that's such a brilliant question. And again, like, you've just opened a whole can of worms, right? So I'm just going to try.
We've only got 20 minutes.
Yeah, don't worry, don't worry.
We can do a deep dive another day.
We'll unpick this. We'll unpick this bit by bit. But okay, so first of all, financial planning. I'm going to sort of answer your question, right? So what is financial planning? Look, simply having the right strategies in place with regard to your finances. So whether that's savings, investments, pensions, insurance, all that sort of stuff, having it in place in line with your life. Okay. And I'll just explain how that works. Okay. So, you want to retire at, I don't know, let's say 65. Okay. a financial plan or strategy is having a pension in place. Okay. Another example I can give you is that you say, my kids, if you've got young children, say, I want my kids to have a certain amount of money set aside for when they get finish
16 or
university.
something.
Yeah, when they finish university, so that there's a fund to set them up for life, and then they've got money set aside for things that they want to spend on, like your deposit for a first home, getting married, etc. You set up an investment in place. Okay, I'll take it from the beginning. I got into financial planning completely by accident. Okay, so completely by accident. I may have not mentioned this before. I went to university. I did a law degree. Funny enough, I didn't even want to do a law degree. I actually wanted to go into theatre and acting, right? But I did a law degree. Came home from university. I went to university in the Midlands. Came home and I was like, okay, what do I want to do in my life? The first job I ended up getting was working for a bank, right? And then it was one of these that sort of manager trainee programs. Got into there, and then very quickly, shortly after, I got approached by one of the managers who looked after the financial advisors. And he's like, I think you'd be a really good financial advisor. And I said, well, why'd you say that? He goes, you got to be good at talking. Also, you've got to be really good at listening. And then you just listen to people, you interview them, and then you kind of work out what financial plans are in place. I was like, yeah, cool, sign me up. So signed up, did the exams, did all the financial planning exams, got through it within the year. And then very soon it was like, here you go, here's your clients, go out and do it. And honestly, it was such a cool thing because it was very different from being attached to the bank. Bearing in mind, I was like in my early 20s. Like, I think I was 24 when I became a financial.
So here you go. So you're a 23, 24-year-old doing financial planning for people of all different ages.
Yeah.
Not just your people the same age as you, but people who are a lot older as well. So
Exactly. And it actually feels quite weird because
Yeah.
a lot of it is like abstract, right? A lot of it you don't realize because it's theory. I did all the exams, I did all the books, the studies. It says, for a 40-year-old you do this, for a 50-year-old you do this, for a 60-year-old you do this. But because you never have experience, because you're not walking them shoes yourself, a lot is abstract. So yeah, I'd see clients, and I'd come across clients in their 60s or their late 50s, and they'll say, I'll assess their financial, I'll assess their finances, and then I'd say, okay, if you told me you want to retire on a certain amount a year, this is where your pension currently is. This is how much you need to be. This is where you need to be, and then this is how much you need to pay into it. And actually, that's the hardest part. The hardest part isn't just about putting the strategies or the structures in place. The hardest part of my job then was making a really good, compelling argument or a good case for that client to actually do it. Because a lot of the times the objections were like, oh, I can't afford it,
Yeah.
or I don't want to do it. And I was like, well, let's be honest. This is what your life could look like if you don't choose to do
So
it.
you've got to make some tough decisions.
You have to make some time. You've got to get really good at objective reasoning. It's not like, oh, you just do it, or do it because I need to get my sales target, or do it because this is the right thing. You have to actually understand what's the triggers, what's the sticking points. So that was tough. Where I'm gonna take it a different layer and say, I had huge challenges. I'm gonna completely be honest. I had huge challenges when it came to a lot of my South Asian clients. Okay,
That was my next question, actually.
yeah. So a lot of my South Asian clients, right? There were so many parts to this, and actually, this is when you understand different cultures, different norms. A lot of my South Asian clients, even talking to them about pensions, honestly, I could go blue in the face sometimes.
So what is it? Why is it that South Asian people are so averse to this, or I mean, especially one thing is when you're when you're in your mid-20s. I don't know when I'm in my mid-20s, I'm not worried about 65 because it's so far away. That's 3-4 decades away. I'm not worried about, I'm living life, I'm enjoying myself, I'm strong, I'm going to the gym, socializing, starting my work strategy. I'm not thinking about 65, right? Although it comes around quick, right? It's now, I'm closer to 60 now than I am to 50. And I can't even believe that. In my mind, I'm like, really? How did that happen? So it comes around quick. But when you're 22, 23, you can't think that far ahead. So how do you convince someone? How do you try and explain to someone that, look, that now I can say, you know what, youngster, this is going to come around a lot faster than you realize. In the blink of an eye, you're going to have grey hair. In the blink of an eye, your children go to university, right? But this is the hindsight of old age, right? Or older age, yeah. But when you're in your mid-20s, early 30s, you're in a different kind of mental zone. So how do you convince these people?
Yeah, again, good question. And yeah, absolutely, as you say, that life comes at you fast, right? As they say, it if it's any compliment, you don't look closer to 60. So let me flip the question, actually, if that's all right. Question to you is, do you have a pension?
I don't actually. I don't have a pension. I mean, I had pensions when I was working permanently, but I became a contractor very, very early on.
Yeah.
And I decided, maybe to my folly, or I decided that, well, I wanted to manage my own pension, so I started investing directly in stocks and shares, right? And I did okay.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I did better than the pension fund, but the way that I saw it was that the pension funds are they're using your money, they're investing in stocks and shares, and again, as a precocious young upstart, I was thinking, well, I can do better than that because I used to work in investment banking. So I took it upon I did set money aside for trading. So, and again, I'm not a financial advisor.
Yeah.
But as someone who's done that,
yeah,
I don't recommend that. I do not recommend it because on 3 separate occasions, I made a lot of money. I lost all of it. A few years later, made a pot, lost it. That happened 3-4 times. And this is to do with trading. Traders generally, this is the journey of a typical trader, that you make money, lose the pot, make money, lose the pot, and it's only until you lose your 3rd or 4th pot that you start to understand what risk is. Yeah. So I did okay eventually, but the first 3 times that I lost everything, if I didn't recover it, I would not. I wouldn't have that capital, and B, I also wouldn't have a pension. Right.
Yeah.
So that's not a strategy that I would recommend to anyone. Like today, I would say to anyone, get your pension sorted out. If you want to do trading separately, you only do that with money that you can absolutely afford to lose.
Yeah.
I did trading with money that I couldn't afford to lose. Yeah. And some of it was pot luck. Some of it was luck where I was able to recover some of it, but I had some really sticky moments. Yeah. Anyway. Back to pensions.
And again, the only reason I asked you that question is, again, you've given me the answer that majority of my South Asian clients gave. Which so the answer to it is, the reason a lot of them struggled to convince them of paying into pensions. I'll be honest, a lot of it was down to things like ego, saying I could do better myself.
Yeah.
And this is the thing I have to explain to people, right? A pension, for most people that don't, a pension is just an investment, okay? Yeah. It's just a long-term investment. It's the same thing as you look at a stocks and shares ISA or anything. It's just an investment. What is an investment? It's just putting money away for longer term being anything more than 5 years, okay? So typically, just give you a really simple example. If I'm in my early 30s, my pension is there for the next 35 years or 30 years until I get to the age 65. So it's a long-term investment. It's got investments within there, so you can, most pension funds will initially pick the fund for you. Yeah. If you want to do your research and change it, some people can. I'd always encourage people to pay more attention to it, but you can change the funds. You can go more high risk, low risk, preference of certain types of investments, ethical, Sharia, etc., and then just keep paying into it. The challenge I used to have, especially the reason the factor is, I used to have the challenge a lot with my South Asian clients, is they'll say, oh, but my property, I got property, I'm going to outperform it, I'll do better than that, okay? And
which is not guaranteed.
Which is not guaranteed. And I'll be honest, I never used to get pulled into that debate, right? Because one, I'm not a seasoned property investor, but also it's like, I get it because it's tried and tested, it works. But let me just explain to you about a pension as well, is you've got investments in there that can do really, really well. If we look at some of the stock market investments over the last 2-3 years, US stock market's just been flying. We're seeing like stupid returns in some funds, like 30-40%, right? So US stock market's been doing really well. But I think for a lot of the challenges, I used to have a lot of my Asian clients, it's like, oh no, I don't want to get a pension because it's risky. It's like, but property has its own risk.
Of course it does.
And it was often the comparator. So I think the one thing to make it clear is, like, there's a lot of brown people there's this fixation that property is the only investment. And I always used to say that when it comes to this, as a financial planner, but also just someone as just being a bit pragmatic as an investor, don't keep your eggs in one basket,
Absolutely,
okay?
yeah.
So have a range. I'm not going to deny, yes, there will be certain years that properties outperformed investments, right? But there's other years where stock market investments have outperformed property.
Can you talk about the tax benefits? Because
Yeah.
there's some pensions that the employer will contribute.
Yeah.
So you're basically getting, if I put £100 in, the employer will put in £100. So that's double. I'm getting double my value. But there's also a lot of tax benefits, which, property and other vehicles don't have. And that's really, really important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and exactly as you mentioned, that's the other side of a pension that most people don't get. They don't realize that paying into a pension, one, you're getting tax relief on it anyway. So what tax relief is automatic? If you're a basic rate taxpayer, the government adding 20% to whatever your pension is, whatever you pay into it. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, you're getting another 20%. And if you're self-employed, you can claim your pension contributions from your business expenses. You could say, I've paid in 20 grand into my pension this year. You just take it off your tax
there you
bill.
go. I didn't know that.
So there's
I actually
massive,
didn't know that.
yeah. So there you go. There's massive benefits of that, of paying into the pension. Obviously, you get 25% of that pension fund as a tax-free lump sum when you get to your retirement age. But also the thing that people miss out, which does frustrate me a little bit, and I'm going to give you some really interesting statistics in a second. The thing that really does frustrate me is that you get something since 2012, the government brought in this new law called auto enrollment. Okay,
Yeah.
What auto enrollment is by law, all employers, as long as you're working a certain amount of hours and you're on I think there's a certain threshold which I can't remember off the top of my head, but as long as you did a certain amount of hours and you're paying a certain amount of national insurance contributions, you automatically are enrolled into a workplace pension. Okay, and by law now, the amount that has to go into that pension has to be 8% by law.
Right.
Okay. So typically, most employers will do the bare minimum, which is like they pay 3%, you got to pay 5%. But by law, if you're auto enrolled into pension, 8% goes into. Now, there's the catch. The catch is, depending on the size of your employer and depending on like how generous your employer is. So some employers, like large companies, they're really generous with the contributions they give you. So I'm going to give you an example. I won't name the company, but I worked for an insurance company some years ago where the standard auto-enrolled pension was 8%, but then they said to me, if I go up by like another 3 or 4%, they'll double my contributions, right? So I went up to 12, okay? So I went up to standard percentage. I went up from 5 to 8%, and they went up from 8 to 14%. So all of a sudden, I was getting like 22% of my equivalent of my salary going into my pension. So in the 5 years I was with this insurance company, basically I made up enough pension that I would have done in 10 years. And that's the thing which frustrates me, is not enough people, especially Asian people. I was having this conversation with a close friend of mine who works in investment banking, and he was like, I've opted out of my pension. I was like, you what? And he was like, yeah, I don't believe in it. I was like, but bro, he
was an idiot like me.
But ignorant. But ironically, he can't. He can't be an idiot. He works in investment banking. He's got an economics degree. He's done well. But ironically, it's the ignorance, isn't it? It's the ignorance behind not understanding how it works. So he opted out of the pension, and the first thing I had to say, like, bro, you're not even a higher. I'm pretty sure he's an additional rate taxpayer. It's like, you earn this amount. You're literally paying tax unnecessarily, and you work for an investment bank that all you need to do is pay your standard 5%, and they're probably going to match you, like, because he's quite senior. It's like, they're probably going to give you like 14-15%.
But I wonder,
so you're leaving money on the table there.
That environment. I've worked in investment banking for half of my life. When I was working, there's a lot of ego there. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of alpha male kind of energy, and you get a lot of people who think that, you know what,
I know better.
I know better. All these models, all these quants and all these quant physicists making these models. I can do better than that. Jupiter Fund is making 16% per annum. 16%, that's rubbish. I can make 16% in a month, right? That ego is there, isn't it?
Completely. But the one thing about ego, Khalid, is it's temporary. And again, in my whole experience, as I keep saying, I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years, right? in my whole experience, the people that always say they're going to do it, guess what? Ironically, they never actually do the strategy.
Yeah.
So all these people that said, oh, I was going to pay into my pension, or I wasn't going to pay into my pension because all these amazing investment strategies, I was going to build this amazing portfolio of properties or crypto.
Well,
or do it. A lot of them never end up doing it because the ego gets in the way and it just stops them from doing anything.
The problem that we've got now is that it's actually been made worse because over the past 10, 11 years, this new the crypto scene and meme coins and tokens, there's all these group chats that popped up where people are talking about invest in this coin and we're going to pump this coin and we're going to make 10x, and people are talking about 10x and 100x returns on coin. None of it actually materializes. It might materialize 1 in 100 coins, but again, there's so much more out there now that is there for distracting people. So people are focused on, and I think a lot of younger people are guilty of this. They're focused on, let me make a quick win now.
Yeah.
Right. And the pension's not even on their mind. So they're focused on, let me make this 10x, let me make this 15x.
Yeah.
And playing about with these leveraged accounts on, meme coins and crypto, which basically, let's be honest, right, it's just gambling.
Yeah.
It's nothing different from gambling. And what they're not doing is regularly putting away that 100, 150, 200 pounds into a pension, because I think with the pension, it's the long game. It's the long game.
100%.
Putting a little bit away.
Yeah.
And forgetting about it. That's what's going to make you secure in the long term.
100%. So I'll give you two really interesting facts, right? So they say, I've heard this phrase loads of times, that look after the pennies and the pounds look after themselves, right?
Yeah, my dad used to say that.
Honestly,
the penny is wiser than the pound.
Completely.
My dad used to say that.
Completely. And honestly, with investments, right? I can tell you this because I've seen people build up some pretty decent sized pension funds, right? With investments, it is literally, I keep saying, a pension is an investment. You don't need to be paying thousands of pounds every month. And even if you're doing a couple of £100 every month, when you're young, it just compounds over time. I have seen clients that have built up like 800, 900,000 pound pension pots. And when I then look at it, the breakdown, and I go back and say, okay, over the 30 odd years,
what did they do?
What did you actually pay? I look at it, and honestly, people are like, oh, how do I, and that's, how do I build up at 800, 900, that's impossible. I go back and I'm like, I do all the numbers and look at it and I think they've probably in their working lives, they paid about 150, 200,000 pounds of their money, right? Which, if you break down that amount over 30 years, it's actually not much.
It's not a lot.
It's about 3,000 or 4,000 pounds a year. Which again, you divide that up over the space of 12 months.
But the gains are exponential,
But
right?
the gains are. But where you make the returns on that pension is one, as I mentioned about the tax relief. So as I said, if you're basic rate taxpayer, high rate taxpayer, you automatically get 20% or 40% paid into the pension. But then all the additional benefits, like bearing in mind that the employer matching stuff's only been around for since 2012, so it's only been around for about 14 years. But even that, those employer contributions will massively help to boost your pension. And if you happen to be invested in a really good fund, which if you've been invested in a good fund over the last 5 years, my pension's doubled. One of my pension funds has doubled over 5 years just because where it's invested and it's done well.
That's a lot.
So that's the point I always make to people. I use this term called reverse engineering, like work it backwards. To get 800, 900,000, £1 million, you don't need to be paying. But this, if you break it down, this is where you'll need to get. The other really interesting facts I wanted to come back and explain it to you was, again, I looked at some studies I came across. And again, I'm particularly focusing on Pakistanis and Muslims in general and why we have quite bad association with pensions. I found these studies on the Institute of Fiscal Studies. So again, if anyone wants to know, I'll happily share the link. But it looked at the opt-out rate. So opting out is basically when you have the option to go into a pension and you choose to opt out. I looked at the comparison of ethnic minorities compared to like white counterparts, and the standard opt-out rates for most white people was around 10%, which is industry average, but there's going to be exceptions. Some people will opt out for whatever reason. For Pakistanis, that number went up to 16%, So Pakistanis...
50% more.
Yeah, so Pakistanis on average opted out by 16%. And then we looked at Bangladeshis, and guess how much they opted out by?
17, 18?
24%.
That's a
So
huge
for
difference.
Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, we opted out 16% to 24%.
Oh
Okay,
my God.
so there's so many facets, there's so many reasons to it, but one of the main reasons was just lack of understanding. Again, if we look at the common denominator, and not to generalize here, but most Pakistanis by default nature majority Muslim, most Bangladeshis by nature majority are Muslim. So there was that religious element to it. So obviously not understanding the options there, and which most people don't always understand. Just to explain, most pensions now offer a Sharia compliant investment fund. So people are like, oh, it's not in compliance with my religious faith. There is a Sharia compliant investment
Which basically means that the shares or the instruments that are being invested in, they've been researched, so there won't be a brewery on there. There won't be, alcohol related or tobacco related stocks. So basically, the stocks are screened.
Correct.
Yeah, and they're checked to see what this individual company is it Sharia compliant. So then you've got a basket of Sharia compliant instruments that is used to make up the pension scheme, right?
Yeah.
So, but again, as you said, I think not many people are aware of this.
Yeah, exactly, correct. But not many people. So those that fund is screened in there, so it's not investing any vices, no tobacco, gambling, pornography, anything that's considered non-halal. It's in, but most people don't realize it. And then if I look at, so that's the religious element, and then I look at the cultural element of this as well. Again, I explain one of the things, the challenges is always like the property, whatever. But then there's also a little bit of just the ignorance about just not understanding anything outside of property or a bank savings account. But then from a cultural point of view, because I know when I looked at a whole load of data from the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, and I found this data from the Borough of Tower Hamlets. And if you look at cultural norms, right? So Bangladeshis, I take for example, from a culture perspective, a lot of them, it was like single income households, so male breadwinner. There wasn't these dual income households, which has now changed in a lot of Asians anyway. So there was that. English wasn't even first language for a lot of these people. Most were business owners as well. So there were so many different facets to this. Even we can get into different conversations about like not understanding how the tax system works.
Yeah.
So there were so many different layers and levels to this, but that then made me think, okay, now there's so go back to I think there's a massive education piece here. And I also think that when it comes to investing, I think as religious leaders, I think they can be doing more to explain how it works, your obligation. And it's the thing we talk about, we have to speak about this all the time. It's like, yes, I get it from a practicing or non-practice, but religion is important, and obviously beliefs and what we should be doing. But it's that phrase, as they say, isn't it? Tie your camel, right? To do your thing.
You have to tie your camel. I've heard you use that phrase so many times.
I use this phrase, and again, look, it's quite scary when I have conversations with my own friends. Look, I said this at the beginning. I'm a 43-year-old man. I've got 3 kids. I've got a mortgage. I'm in the finance career. I'm literally in the thick of life, right? Yeah. But I have got the structures in place. I have the strategies in place. I've got a pension. I've got investments for myself. I've got investments for my children. I have savings accounts for the rainy days. I've got life insurance to pay off the mortgage. I've got life insurance to pay my kids and my wife an amount if I get sick. And I've got a will. I've literally covered the bases.
You've covered all the bases. And you're doing that to protect your wife and your children, because especially like your children, they're all under 6.
Under the age of 10, yeah.
They're all under the age of 10, right? And they're innocent. They need protection. And God forbid, time of death, no one knows.
Completely.
We always think it's for people who are older, but it can strike us at any time. So what you're doing is you've put in protections for your children and your missus, that God forbid the worst happens, they'll be okay, right? They won't be struggling. They'll have backup. They'll have a roof over their heads. They'll be able to attend good schools, and go on to live a fulfilled life, right?
Exactly. And this is what I'm saying. And go back to the thing is like, as a South Asian, and especially as a Muslim as well, like you have an obligation to protect your family. So just saying I go out and I earn the income and I'm the breadwinner and I bring that's still not enough. You've got to do more than that. And I keep saying, I have conversations with people of a similar age. It's like, oh, come on, you got some life insurance. Oh, bro, I didn't do it. It's like, what's going to happen? It's like, oh, Allah will take care of me. It's like, I get it. But then...
Which we believe that. We believe that.
Yeah.
But you've got to do something as well, right?
Exactly. go back to tax. Yeah, I get it. And, you know, Allah always finds a way, provides,
It's
etc.
our rizq is written,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
still have to go to work.
Exactly.
You're not if you sit at home and do nothing.
Exactly. You can't have that mindset. And what harm is it going to do and you know going out there and taking out a 60, 70, 80 pound a month life insurance, but it's probably not going to cost you that much. But it's like, you know, so that is a bit of ignorance there as well.
So I want to move on to financial planning as well, right? But before we go on to that, what just really briefly, like 60 seconds, what advice would you give to someone who doesn't have a pension, or youngster, people who are in their early 20s, early 30s who may not have a pension at the moment? What advice would you give them?
Okay, quick 60 seconds of it. So I'm not going to give quote unquote, there's not advice, it's just what I would do. Okay, if I'm early in my job and I've just started, I would do 3 really simple things. Okay, 1, opt into the pension. So make sure you're paying into the, when automatically the employer opts you into pension, and then you've got a couple of months to choose if you don't want to be part, or any time you can write them. So opt into the pension. 2, get online. Okay, so most pensions have apps. They've got a website, you can log in. You know, every time a company sets up a pension scheme, they send you the details of that pension scheme. So typically it's like an Aviva, Scottish Widows, Legal and General, Standard Life, Nest, those sorts of companies. They send you the details, go online, go on the website, type your policy number, get registered, because loads of people don't do it. They forget the pension. Once you're registered, you get emails. Also, the other thing is when you can get online and get registered, you can pick your beneficiaries, which a lot of people don't do. And nominating the beneficiaries is, again, so important, because if you die and you've got a pension fund built up, automatically that pension is given to. And it's so easy. I mean, between myself, I've just said, my wife and 3 of my kids will get my pension. So that's so easy to do, so quick and simple. And then the other thing is when you want to get interested and more excited, and obviously take the employer contribution. So this is a bit of a bonus one. Take the employer contribution, but also if your employer will pay into it, take as much of the matching contribution until they stop. So if they say you go up by another 3, we'll match you by another 3. Take it, because it's
It'd be
free.
silly not to. It's free money, isn't it?
Effectively. It's free money. And the last one I was just say is if you want to
Asians love a bargain.
Asians love a bargain. That's the best way to explain.
2 for 1.
And the last one I'd say is, again, if it's a bit of a bonus one, but I'd encourage more people to do, is understand it. Like read the booklets, look at it, switch funds. Most pensions funds are invested in what's called the default, which is the standard one that they pick. Typically is kind of middle of the road. But if you want to understand it, if you want to get better returns, then look at the booklets, look at the returns. You have these thing called fund fact sheets, which you just download and look at it in your pension booklet, and look at it for 5 years. And you think, actually, I prefer that investment. I can't access this for another 30 odd years anyway. I may as well go to this fund because it suits my risk profile. If it does, then just switch it. But the main thing is just get online, because loads of people just don't do it.
Awesome. This is kind of related. It brings me into estate planning. Because when you're talking about beneficiaries, that's actually part of your estate planning as well, right? So I know another thing that you do is you help people manage their estates as well, right? So I've come across, in conversations with other people, there's a lot of myths and misunderstandings about how inheritance tax works, right? So I'll give you a contrived example. If someone's got assets worth about 800,000, say, and they've got 4 kids, that person's thinking, well, okay, my assets are worth 800,000. I've got 4 children. I'll divide my 800,000 by 4. They get 200,000 each. I'm below therefore they don't have to pay inheritance tax, right? Job done. Now that's wrong, isn't it? That it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah. So let me just.
How does it work?
So let me give you a really quick example, right? And again, hold a different question: brown people and estate planning. Again, Asian people.
It's us again. It's the Pakistanis, isn't
honestly, it? Again, I hate to single us out. It's Pakistanis and estate planning in particular, right?
It's terrible.
Give me a quick example, okay? So the way inheritance tax works is that once you die, I'm not gonna say if you die because we're all gonna die. Once you die, your estate, which is the value of all of your assets, assets being your home, your car, your savings, your investments, anything like that. I'm gonna explain a little bit about pensions and life insurance within that in a second. all of that is just calculated. So I'll just give you a really simple example. If that's worth £1 million, okay, you have something called a nil rate band. So the nil rate band that everyone has individually is £325,000, okay? So you can have assets up to that
That's
much.
not a lot.
If you're married, you have twice that. You've got £650,000. So that's your nil rate band. Which again, if you look at the average cost of a home in London now, is worth more than that. Something the government brought into recently is they've increased the nil rate band up to £1 million for a home for your main home. Okay, so again, give you an example. Let's say your main house is worth £1 million, and between you and your wife, you're still married. You have a £650,000 allowance, and then they give you the extra to top it up to £1 million. That amount is exempt. Okay, now where it gets,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So that's something that was brought in. Where it gets a bit more complicated is that, bear in mind, that only applies to your main home.
Yeah.
If you've got investments, so have you got other forms of investment? If you've got additional properties, if you've got a portfolio of rental properties, that stuff is then all accumulated and added up to your estate. So you can have an estate worth 2 million.
Yeah.
Right? Most people, and again, I keep saying it, if you're a property owner in London now, you're very fortunate. But again, if you own anything more than a 3-bedroom house, your property's going to be more than 650,000.
Yeah, in London.
Anyway.
In London.
In London, anyway. In London, your property's going to generally be more than that. So it's very easy to creep over those inheritance tax brackets. Now, the problem I find with a lot of Asians, again, go back to the Pakistani thing, is that because we don't understand it,
we're cooked, aren't we?
We're honestly, bro, we are cooked because we don't do anything about it, and we just choose to ignore it, which is then really like what they call it, was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like we do all of this planning, we want to save money for kids, we want to set them up for their futures, have funds for when they get, but then we don't do the estate planning around it. And the thing is, look, let's be honest. The way lives are now, everything's different compared to like a generation before, isn't it? Most people aren't finishing university at 21 now. They're going a couple of years later. Most people aren't getting married in their 20s anymore. They're probably going up to late 20s, early 30s. Most people aren't buying their first property in their 20s. They're going to 30s, probably even later. So everything's changed. So you also have to then think, by the time that they are of a certain age, you will be in your 70s, your 60s and 70s, right? So at that point, you need to start thinking about, can I be gifting? There's no point of holding all this wealth and then saying, I'm going to give it away like my last 5 years. And
it doesn't work like that, does it?
It doesn't. And actually, with estate planning, there's something called the 7-year rule, which I'm sure you've given away. But you have to start gifting those assets away 7 years before the event has happened. So we're in 2026 now. If you want your kids to have a certain asset by 2033, 2034, that money's got to be gifted now. There's certain conditions attached as well. So if you say, like, I want to gift my main property away to my daughter or my son, but then you're still living in that property, that's not allowed. That's called a gift with reservation. They'll find a way. So many people try to get around it.
And you have to gift it now. The main reason is because if you pass away, they are then hit with inheritance tax. Right? This is the thing.
Which we've not explained is 40%, right? Which is 40%. So again, go back
almost half of it.
Yeah, which goes back to example. Let's say you've got an estate worth £2 million, right? Or the first million is exempt because you've got the nil rate band plus the additional nil rate band for main property. Let's say you've then got other assets within that. If you then say between my 4 kids, which again, £1 million between 4 kids is like 250k each.
If they got all of it.
If they got all of that. But if you've not done the estate planning in the right way, then you take off £400,000 of that. So actually what you're leaving them is only £600,000, which then you then go back and say, well, kids, I said I was going to give you like 250 each. Bearing in mind you're not going to be around, so it's all going to be done by the will or whoever the executives are. But it's actually you're gonna have to divide 650 between 4 of you. So actually you get 150 each, which is a lot less. Yeah. And I kid you not, like, again, one thing, again, you have to give. We've done a lot of Pakistani bashing. I'm going to give some Pakistani credit now. The one thing that Pakistanis are very good at doing is they are very hardworking. They're very good at building up portfolios, whether it's businesses, property, and so on. I've come across clients that have got 3-4 businesses. I've come across clients that have got 6 or 7 properties, all of a
But it's the
sudden.
tying the loose ends up.
But
That's where
yeah,
we
but the point I was
fail.
going to say is all of a sudden they then have an estate worth 7-8 million pounds. Like, Uncle, you done really well, and this is just a standard guy.
Yeah.
It's not someone phenomenally like like a massive like US tech entrepreneur.
It's just someone who's made good
It's just a
decisions.
standard guy. He's made good decisions, just carried on working, got his head down, and just carried on working. It's like, oh, you've done stuff, isn't it? You've put your business, you've put these things into trust, or you've taken up some life insurance to cover the estate. I've not done anything better. I was like, Uncle, please, like, and then I'm saying it's the
And you're
hardest.
afraid for him now.
I am, and it's the hardest. I'll be honest. And this is the thing that gets me. This you can tell why I'm so passionate about. The hardest clients when it comes to estate planning, I'll be honest, just from experience, are the Pakistani ones,
that.
are the Muslim ones, because they don't understand it. And then they just choose to bury their heads in the sand.
Yeah.
They never do it, and that's the really sad thing, Khalid. Is honestly, the amount of like.
Are we too busy making money to that we're not worried about what to do with it later? We're too busy in the process of generating and creating wealth, and we don't even spend that 1%, 2% of time that is absolutely necessary to work on the frameworks to secure it. Because what we're talking about is securing that wealth for the next generation, and ultimately that's what you're doing. If you're working, long hours and doing all the overtime, working weekends, and your typical Pakistani guy is or girl or lady is going to say, "I'm doing it for my kids." We only do it for our children, isn't it?
Yeah.
You work hard for your children, yeah, as I do, right? But we kind of fall over on one of the most important bits of all, which is how do we secure this? How do we secure this wealth? Which is a huge shame, really.
Yeah, and again, you're right. I think there's so many parts to it. I think you are right in the sense. I think from experience, I think one of the reasons why they've chosen not to do it is that you're right. It's like we spend all the hours working this up. I mean, again, client confidentiality. I won't specifically, but remember there was one uncle that I came across that, I was like, Uncle, why did you not do this? He's like, oh, beta, I literally just. I used to get up every day for 6 days a week. I used to get up at 6 in the morning. I used to go into central London. I used to open my business. I used to work there. I'd get home at like 8:30, sometimes even 9. I'd come home, have dinner, and then just go to bed.
There's no
and on Sunday, I was just dead. So I literally just spent Sunday.
There's no mental bandwidth.
There isn't, and it was so hard. Like, it's such a difficult conversation because I think this poor guy has worked for 30, 40 years, just did this thing to do what he thinks was right for his kids, was building up this massive portfolio of businesses and estate and assets and property and so on. And then I was like, why have we not done anything about this? Like, I just never had the time. And I was just like, Uncle, did no financial advisor ever approach you? He goes, no, he did. I remember even early days when I first came across this uncle, I'm talking about 10 plus years ago, I had to see him. I still remember I had to go to his business in central London at like 7 in the evening, and I still remember this. I won't names, but it was like one real dodgy part of London. I ended up going to this guy's pharmacy, and I was like, "Why am I going to that?" And I guess it was like completely like it was out of the blue because I was just my days. I used to work in the city, so I was still in a nicely dressed suit. I was rocked up to this part of like near Hackney somewhere. I was like, "What the hell am I doing here, man?" And I turned up. And ironically, that's the only time that Uncle could make for me to go see, because he was like, I'm not prepared to take.
Busy.
So that's the irony is like all you need to do is I'm not going to say it's a hard process. It is a time consuming process. It is detailed because we need information about everything, shares, property, investments, everything like that. It does take some time, from experience. Like I always say, whenever I'm doing this stuff with clients, it can take up to 15, 20 hours worth of work. Okay, it's a lot of work. You have to have meetings with the beneficiaries and the the trustees as well. So often it was like, okay, I want to see you again, but I want your kids to be here because they need to understand.
They need to know as well.
They need to know. They need to understand what their responsibility. So it can be, but honestly, it's one of the best things you could do. Once you've done it, it's set. And again, I'm just going to compare the difference. Like the Asian clients, I have to say, I've had struggles, whereas I've done inheritance tax planning, estate planning for a lot of my like Western clients, and honestly, I can't tell you the reassuring feeling from a financial advisor, financial planner's point of view is once you've finally done it, it's taken you a few months, you've set up the structures, and then you get to meet with their kids and they're like, oh, I'm so glad you did that.
Yeah, there's a mental relief, isn't there?
there's a mental relief, and it does happen. Like, from experience, there's one of my clients. I set up some estate planning for her years ago. We did various things. We set up investments, we put things into trust, we set up some life insurance policies to pay off any inheritance tax planning. Bearing in mind, this client was in her early 70s when I done it. She's got dementia now, bless her. So she's not even in a mental capacity to do anything
She
like
can't make
that.
this decision.
She's got fairly sizable estate, but guess what? I did the planning for her. So her kids, even when they speak to me, they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad you did this stuff. It took a while, but we're so glad we did it." So
look, that's a really good point to finish on. A good story, right? A positive story.
nice.
What I've realised is that this estate planning conversation, this is a whole episode. We could actually do a 2-hour session on this, which we don't have today. So I want to thank you for coming today. It's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you. Where can people find you if people want to find you to talk about pensions or estate planning? You have an Instagram account?
I do have an Instagram, so if anyone wants to follow me, I am the pensions guy. It's really simple, at the pensions guy. I try not to make it boring, really short, quick bits of content just on pensions, basic stuff, a few bits about parenthood and fatherhood, which I think will tie in together. But yeah, find me on Instagram as the pensions guy.
I will add that to the description below. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me, Khalid.
Thank you, Waleed.
All right. Cheers.